We're going to get started right now with news you can use. And today's topic is the 7 deadly mistakes that all first-time real estate investors make. 7 common mistakes that real estate investors make. All right, let's get started right now. Number 1, first thing that beginning new real estate investors do incorrectly is they have get-rich-quick thinking. In other words, everybody thinks this is an easy path to make money, flipping houses in some form or fashion, or becoming a long-term buy-and-hold landlord is the way to make yourself a ton of money. It's not. This is a good living. In some cases, it is an excellent living. But generally, in my experience, I have found that comes with and from a long period of time in the business. And if you've got a long period of time in the business, you will have suffered through most of the mistakes. Any of these guys that have been in this business for, 20 years or something like that and tell you that they've done everything that they've ever done has made money, in other words, they've been profitable on every transaction, I'd say, first of all, that's a lie. They either don't know their numbers or they're just flat out lying. Anybody who's been in this period of time has lost money on one or more deals. In my case, I've lost money on probably several hundred transactions I've been involved with. And it's only when you get to that level of engagement where it could possibly go south on you, if the market turns down quickly and you get caught, as Warren Buffett would say, when the tide goes out, you find out who's wearing swimming trunks or not. Pretty quickly, and you're going to get in that position. So this is not a get-rich-quick business. It's a get-wealthy-slowly business. And if you can develop some other strategies and things like that, it will help you avoid this first problem. And that's the second thing we have, that common mistakes beginning investors make. They don't have a strategy. They have no plan. There's no, I want to do this. I want to do this type of product in terms of houses. Frequently, you'll hear me talk about product. I come from a manufacturing background, an agricultural background, and we think of commodities as products. And in my thinking, houses are products. This is an assembly line business, and you do the same thing along the way. You have a strategy, and you look at the house as a business item, as a product, and you will, in most cases, stay on the right side of the foul line. You won't get emotionally involved with houses, which actually is my bonus, my 8th thing. So having a strategy is very, very important. A lot of people just don't do it. My strategy, for example, is in up-and-coming markets that are solid financially. And you guys have probably watched one of my videos earlier that talked about my 5 criteria for a good market to be in. But I do all of our business remotely, and I do it specifically for rehabbing right now. That's our current business model, rehabbing or buying property subject to and then lease option it out. So I'll either rehab it or do the terms deal. But I do specific cities for the rehab business. I have a specific model for the product or house, which is 3-bedroom, 2-bath, typically a ranch style, stick built, brick built, that type of thing. Needs a modest to a minor amount of work, not a modest to a large amount of work, and meets all of our financial criteria. So we have a very specified strategy, and we stick with that. And when you do that, you tend to lose less than you win. In other words, you will win most of the time. You may lose sometimes, but it's less frequent. Number 3, the biggest mistake people make is being city specific. And this is probably the number 1 thing that we hear our clients come into the business saying, I want to do my business right here in my backyard where I can go see it. That is probably, in my opinion, that's probably your biggest mistake you'll ever make. How do I know this? Well, the first 6, 7, 8 years of my 23 years in the business, I focused on essentially one market, Central California, from Bakersfield to Sacramento area. And I was overlooking things that were in other parts of the country that while California went down, these other areas were going up. And so I had to take a knee during part of the downturn because I didn't have anything other than a city-specific area. So even though I had done hundreds of transactions, I was still in kind of newbie thinking land. I was still beginner thinking. I was thinking it had to be geographically someplace where I could go look at the property. And I've learned from my mentor, Ron Grant, that's one of the biggest mistakes that you can make. And it really is, because as my old adage goes, if there is a $30,000 check sitting there for you, but it's 1,700 miles away, and you got to get there by tomorrow night to pick it up or to lose it if you don't get there on time, would you figure out a way to get 1,700 miles to get that $30,000 check from you? The answer is yeah, absolutely. You'd always figure out a way to go get the money, right? And that's what it is in the house. The deal may not be in your backyard. It probably isn't, but it could be 1,700 miles away. And so if you could do that, if you can figure out a way to do that and have a specific strategy that incorporates that into your business model, you will win, because there's always deals. It doesn't matter what part of the country, but there's always some deals. The fourth mistake that are the common mistakes that beginning real estate investors make is they skip the negotiation stage. Negotiation, and then there's old adage, once again, from my mentor, said 90% of the profit you make on any deal is going to be made the day you make the purchase. The 10% remaining is essentially playing defense. It's things like the rehab, make sure you don't go over budget, things like that, make sure you sell at the right price. But the bottom line is 90% of your profit comes from negotiating a good deal right up front. And so you've got to have a really good negotiation strategy. You've got to understand a little bit about that. We teach some of that in our courses and classes on really how to negotiate with sellers. Personal, it's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And there are a lot of different ways to do it, but the bottom line is if you think you can just do deals without talking to somebody or getting engaged at some level and involving yourself in negotiation, you are mistaken. You will have a beginning strategy. You won't have an intermediate. You have to be good at negotiation. You have to at least understand the basics of it and be able to engage with other people. Fifth thing, underestimating time and cost of the work that is involved in a project. And this was probably the first thing I did. You see these people on TV that flip these house shows where they look at a project and they say, oh, that's $30,000 fix. Something like that. Most of the time, the estimations are wrong. There's, once again, another old adage that I like to live by, and that all houses make half as much, take twice as long, and cost twice as much as what you budget. And that is fairly accurate until you get to the point where you're really good at estimating the cost of work. Just to give you a background, I've been in it 23 years. Our acquisitionist has been in it 30 years and buying for 30 years. And even he's not an expert. Now, he can come in within about 2%, 3% of the actual budget to put a project together in terms of the rehab. But all the other things that go into it, everything from interest costs on your money to insurance to taxes to any of these junk fees that a lot of these cities charge, you need to understand all of that, and you need to budget for everything. Plus, you need to include, in my opinion, at least a 5% margin of error, rounding error, unexpected type things, because the only thing that is certain is that the unexpected really should be expected. In other words, there's going to be things you don't see and you don't know, and that are going to cost you some money. And so you just got to budget in extra for that right up front. So understanding also, in addition to the cost, the time. So frequently these contractors will say, listen, I'll be done. It'll take me 21 days. Okay, great. But you don't have any criteria, benchmarks along the way to gauge them and to measure them. Now, in our rehab contracts, for example, with our contractors, we include benchmarks. So you need to have these 7 items done within a week. If you do, you're going to get paid on time. And if you don't, it's going to be either a penalty, you're going to have to pay extra. You, the contractor, you have to pay us something, or you're going to get your pay delayed or something like that. And so you have to have some carrot and stick type things involved in that. In other words, a carrot if they do a good job and a stick if they don't. And that's just how it works with these contractors. Finding a good contractor you can trust and that will come in on time and on budget it's like a diamond mine. It's like finding the biggest diamond in a diamond mine. They're almost impossible to find, but once you do, hang on, keep them busy if you can. And that is a lifelong process, learning how to find and what to look for, but once you get them, hang on to them. Sixth thing that people make as a mistake, common mistakes that they make right up front, is not inspecting properties. So we do everything remotely. We never go look at properties ourselves. None of us, not our acquisitionist, not my partners and I, none of us go look at the properties. But what we do do is we hire a local person, typically a property inspector, and or a real estate agent who's going to function as our quarterback in the area to go in and do a thorough evaluation. I personally like a licensed home inspector to look at every home that we're going to either keep to flip or keep for some period of longer period of time where we're going to have some ownership interest. So for example, if we buy a property subject to, and then we're going to lease option 10, we're going to own that property for 3, 4, 5, 10 years, something like that, right? So with that said, we want to make sure that that property doesn't have anything hidden, any mistakes, any things that we're not aware of. And you want to get that all up front. And a good home inspector is worth their weight in gold. Because they will uncover things that not only you need to be aware of as an owner of the house, but things that you can use in your negotiation with your contractor to get a better, complete package. And you can negotiate still with the seller if you haven't completed if you've completed the inspection before completing the sale. You can go back to the seller and say, "Listen, Mrs. Seller, you told me there was these 3 things wrong. It turned out there were 17 things wrong. You didn't disclose that there's mold in the wall. You didn't disclose that the heat doesn't work upstairs. You didn't disclose these other things." And you can almost always use those aha discoveries to negotiate a better deal, okay? So keep that in mind and make sure you get your homes inspected. Don't do it yourself, because just like drilling your own teeth, unless you're a dentist, you better not do it. And unless you're a licensed, trained property inspector, you know what to look for, don't do that yourself. We all think we go in and look at houses. I remember the first dozen houses I looked at, I went in expecting to see some, big lights, big red flashing signs showing me, hey, there's something wrong over here and something wrong here. That doesn't, you're stuck with whatever you get. And a lot of the mistakes, a lot of the big costly things are something that's hidden. They're in the walls, between the floors, they're under the floor of the basement, they're up in the attic. They're things that you can't deal with. They're electrical, they're mechanical, they're plumbing issues. They're things that, none of us on this call are really professionally licensed to notice and to understand the scope and depth of the problem. So that's mistake number 6. The 7th mistake is thinking that you can do it all by yourself. I like doing this business with partners. I've had big businesses here where I had 24 employees at one time. In fact, when 9/11 hit, I remember this, I had 8 ladies selling and I had 3 ladies buying houses. So I had 11 people just in that piece of the business. And we had a whole bunch of other people doing lease ups, and we had people coordinating rehabs and things like that. It was a big business. You can't do it by yourself. You'll find that it is lonely out there to do this business by yourself, and you don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of, that kind of thing. So in my opinion, you can get yourself partners, and work with them. Hopefully, the old adage in life, always work with somebody who's smarter than you. That is the best way to go. That's what you're trying to achieve. Get somebody who's got some knowledge, use their knowledge, and learn at the feet of the master. I learned from a guy named Ron LeGrand, who's been in this thing now for over 40 years. And as Don Horn just commented, we love the partner as well. So you will find that a lot of people who've been in this business for a while, that's the only way they want to do business. They want to do business with a partner. So do that. So anyway, that's the top 7 things that are the biggest mistakes that beginning investors make, primarily in their thinking. Now, the bonus category is kind of a nebulous thought, but number 8 as an extra add-on bonus is that you fall in love with a house. And this is probably, it's not on my main list, but it happens all the time. People look at a house and they fall in love with it, and they think, this is a house, I want to fix it up as if they don't have that cognizant thought in their brain, but they function that way. They think, oh, I would never live like that. I would never live with that color wall. I would never live with that plane of a mantle. I would never live with only 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, more bedrooms, more bathrooms, things like that. And that is your own brain not getting involved, letting your emotions take over. And so this is not and should not be an emotional business. It's a business. You make business-like decisions. You base them on numbers, profit, time, that kind of thing. And you get your emotions out of it. So never fall in love with a house. That's one of the biggest problems I see. We get calls all the time from these people, investors who are doing their first project, and they've done a rehab, and it's been going on for 11 months. And the total rehab budget was like $10,000, and they're agonizing over baseboard, color, depth, width, all this kind of junk. That's all shenanigans. That's all horse crap. Forget all that kind of stuff. That's why I always say I never visit houses. Just don't visit them. Don't fall in love with them. That's why you should be doing business someplace far away, so you're not tempted to get on a plane and go look at that property. It is a mistake. And every time, in my opinion, every time you look at a property, if you're the check writer, if you look at a property, you're going to find things that you didn't discover until then that you need to do, and you're going to figure out a way to pay for them. And I guarantee at the end of the day, when you get that thing sold, you're going to make a lot less profit than you think. I've never seen anybody come in with an aha upgrade that needs to be done that turned into anything extra for them in terms of their bottom line profit. So bonus number 8, do not fall emotionally in love with your house. It's simply an inventory piece. It's a product. It's just a piece of the business. It's a widget. And think of it like that. It's just, you need to be getting the next one and going, and boom, boom, boom. This thing's about volume. These houses that you think and you see on TV where they make $1 million on a flip, stay away from that stuff. I've been doing this 23 years. I wouldn't touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole. And I haven't had to learn that mistake in person. In other words, the people who do that, they either squeak by and they make themselves a little bit of money, or they go broke. Literally, they will go bankrupt on a single house because they fell in love with it. They did all of these things that I just discussed wrong. And most importantly, they got emotionally involved with the house. It became, part of their persona. It was them. And it cost them a ton of money. All right. That's it for the common mistakes that beginning investors make. Hopefully you're not making